Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. So I decided to come on and talk about the Venus Libra star point on my own for now. I still may catch up with Ariel down the track. She's just been really, really busy. So I felt, given that Venus is still in Libra at the moment as we speak, by tomorrow she'll be in Scorpio. So I felt that I really needed to share some of my views and ideas and thoughts and feelings while she's still in Libra. That just seemed really appropriate for me to do that. So here I am today, ready to offer you guys some insights. Now, some of the things that I just want to highlight to begin with are that there are many people talking about the Libra and Venus star point. There's lots of YouTube videos that many of you may have already seen. And so my observations have been that, and there's some great material out there. Ariel's actually done quite a few videos already. And it's worthwhile watching them because she does a really good overview of the historical component of what it means to have a Venus star point change signs on the wheel, as she calls it. She calls it the cosmic clock behind the zodiac. So if you can imagine a five-pointed star, which is what is made up of these Venus star points, VSP, as she has abbreviated those points to be termed. And there are two sets of VSP stars that are created over an 8-year period. There are, let me just think, I've just had a mental blank. Sorry, there's four. If I said two, that's incorrect. I meant to say four. So there's four retrograde cycles and there's four direct cycles in an 8-year period, which is where the Venus and the Sun create what's called a cazimi conjunction. And when Venus is retrograde, she's closest to the Earth, and when she is direct, she is furthest from the Earth. So the Venus star point that really took place just hours ago, actually, the new Venus star point in Libra is actually an evening star. And once again, if you want to know more about that from bigger picture levels, you can wait until I catch up with Ariel, because I'm sure we're going to kind of approach it from that perspective. And I might do some further things down the track again, because I've already created a few posts on social media really explaining that, because this is such a historical moment in time for all of us being here on the planet while this transition occurs. We're talking about a Venus star point that basically stays in that sign for around about 100 years, 110, 120, it varies sometimes, but it's at least 100 years each time. So we've got a long time to talk about Venus, the Venus star point being in Libra. We always learn through history, and we always learn through just even looking, bringing that to a much more personal thing. When we look at our own life and our own life journey, it is through retrospect where we actually learn a lot, right? We gain a lot of insight and understanding and experience with the different journeys we've been on, with the different things that happen in our lives, and how we learn and grow and evolve through those. And so it's very similar when you're looking at the Venus star point in Libra. The last time that occurred was in 1871. There was a Venus star point in Libra. So, that was a long time ago. It was a long time ago on every spectrum, really, from an evolutionary perspective, from a historical perspective. Different souls were incarnated at that time. There are different souls incarnated this time. We're at a different point in the process of evolution on a collective level. We are at a different point of evolution in our own personal journey as well, whether we were alive back in the 1800s, which is most likely that we were, even if we were, our life would have been obviously very different at that point. So the soul's focus and intentions would have been very different. So whilst we do learn from history, and sometimes history does repeat, it's not always going to be exactly the same, because we have, from the point of view of time, and we are dealing with time all the time from the perspective of being incarnate into the flesh, into this human body, and having a perception and experience of what feels to be the past, what feels to be the present, and what we imagine to be the future, right? That spectrum corresponds to something we call time, which is very critical here on the 3D earth plane in terms of transitions and changes and shifts. I mean, in the spirit world, there is no time. It's timeless. We have this sense of focal point because we're here in the physical body, so we perceive this thing of time. And once again, it's very important from the point of view of our evolutionary path, particularly here in the third dimension reality. So the Venus star point in Libra is a phenomena that occurs, as I said, every 100 or so years. So it speaks to very large collective cultural, social phenomena, changes, shifts, transformations, evolutions, growths, development. And of course, that always comes back to our own personal journey of growth and development as well. So once again, I don't want to focus too much on the collective sphere of this, because it'll kind of, there'll be another time for that. So what I wanted to bring today, which from my observations thus far, not many people are talking about, what does this Venus star point in Libra mean for me personally, right? And so that's kind of a little bit that's being touched on somewhat when you're talking about the Venus star point in Libra, whether you're talking about it collectively or individually, it still holds the same qualities. It's Libra. We're talking about the archetype of Libra, which, first of all, let's perhaps start there. It's ruled by Venus. And this is a Venus star point, which is a Sun-Venus conjunction. Okay, it occurs every 9 and a bit months. We have a retrograde one, then we have a direct one, then we have a retrograde one, then we have a direct one. And that cycle or that sequence never changes. There's always a direct one and a retrograde one. For instance, we had a retrograde morning star. Well, that's what a morning star is. It's a retrograde cycle in January of 2022 in Capricorn, right? Back in January sometime. So that was the morning star of the Capricorn field and energy. And we're still, in that field of that morning star, right? So the 5 VSP points, Venus star points on the wheel, have a very specific frequency, timeline, entrance, exit, and they move very, very slowly backwards in the zodiac, just like the moon's nodes do. And so one of the other things that I think is important to address, because a lot of people have been anticipating the 22nd of October, which is a big day for the Venus star point ingressing into Libra. But the truth of the matter is that it's not necessarily the case that you're going to have something extraordinary take place on that particular day. You may, or probably not, right? It's more likely not, because these Venus star points move incredibly slowly in the wheel. So the Venus star point enters Libra 22nd of October 2022, and it remains there until 2131, okay, just over 100 years. So it's a long journey, right? That's how long it's going to take for this Venus star point in Libra to complete the journey through the sign of Libra. So when we are working with this Venus star point, we do need to keep in mind that these cycles, they're not small things like, daily transits or weekly transits or monthly transits. They speak to much bigger chapters and transitions in our life as well. So let me just back up a little bit. Some of the things to consider with this Venus star point being in Libra, it is it's not a retrograde cycle, so it's not a morning star, it's an evening star. Now the evening star predominantly depicted in Ariel Gutman's work refers to the goddess who is more connected in the cerebral sphere of our physical body, let's say. So she's not the opposite to that is Pandemos, as Venus has been referred to. Pandemos is the warrior goddess. That's the morning star, connecting more to Taurus, connecting more to the earthly matters. It's the fighter who, she's a warrior, she's a fighter, and she's ready to take action on the earth. Whereas the evening star is the complete opposite. It corresponds more to the archetype of Libra. It's more romantic, it's more dreamy, it's more idealistic, it's more of the mind, it's more of the stars, the spirit world. She corresponds to the goddess Urania. The goddess Urania is the goddess of astrology. Now, Urania is a separate body. There is an asteroid called Urania, so don't confuse the two as being the one. They're not the one, they are different. There's an asteroid called Urania, and then there's a face of Venus that is described by that energy of Urania, right? The goddess Urania, which is connected to the stars. And so this Venus star point in Libra, it has a few different layers to it. It's an evening star, so more connected to ideas, philosophies, spirit, soul, stars, wisdom, romance, peace, harmony, things like that. It is Libra, so then we bring in all the Libran qualities, and just like any archetype or any symbol, there is always a shadow side, right? Nothing is just one-sided or one-dimensional. That there are shades to everything, right? And so obviously the shadow side to Libra is Aries, because that's its opposite, the polarity point, right? And we've got an Aries Venus star point active on the pentagram, and have had it there since I think it was 1929 or somewhere around there, where the Venus Aries star point began. So we've still got quite a while, many years of Aries still being on the star. Well, not too long actually. It's 2041 the Aries star point switches into Pisces, because it goes backwards in the zodiac. So from Aries, it's not going to go forward into Taurus, it's going to go back in the wheel. So it's going to go into Pisces. And so by 2041, and I've gone back into bigger picture stuff, but just an important point to remember, we will have two Venus star points on the wheel that are both related to Venus in quite a profound way. One is that Venus rules Libra, and Pisces is Venus's exalted position. So we're going to have softer vibrations, softer energies on the wheel, as it were, right? So with Libra, we're talking about, qualities of grace, graceful movement, graceful participation, diplomacy, fairness, justice, equality, balance, harmony, music, love, peace, balancing things up, not being so, selfish, Aries, self-serving, right? There's always a time and place where, there needs to be a process of evolution where we need to build on our individuality, Aries, right? Our identity, Aries, and experience perhaps many lifetimes, or perhaps many years, if we're talking about a Venus star point, such as the Aries one. There are times and reasons as to why we need to really develop specific archetypes. And with Aries, it's always about our own identity, independence, identity, and forming that understanding of who you are as a single entity, as it were. But Libra coming onto the wheel is pointing us to a complete paradigm shift, which we can see that's been happening the last many years actually, but the last 2.5 years have been incredibly cataclysmic, which is very Aries and certainly Scorpio as well. And this cataclysmic energy that's been really heightened the last 2.5 years is while this Libra and Venus star point has been in Scorpio, okay? So Aries, Scorpio on the wheel, which have been active for a very long time, the Scorpio Venus star point has been active for, over 120 years. I just can't quite remember if it was 150 or 140, something like that. So a very long time. And Scorpio is ruled by Mars and Pluto, of course. And then we've got Aries on the wheel, and that's ruled by Mars. So we're talking about Mars, Martian, masculine. Although Scorpio is a feminine archetype, it's still ruled by Mars, Pluto, which appear to be more masculine in manifestation, frequency, and so forth, right? So those archetypes, can be very brutal, can bring about, tremendous intensity and conflict. Mars, god of war, conflict, tension, fighting, confrontation, constant confrontation and fighting for this and for that, and this is mine, and this is my idea, and I want to put this law in, and I want, whatever it's been, right? It's been a lot of that, and it's obvious that, as above, so below, as within, so without, and we are at a time in history where we are ready to step into a new paradigm that certainly does speak to the hope for a lot more balance and harmony and peace that needs to be integrated back onto the earth, as it were. And it's not even that so much, because the earth is always balanced. She's always balanced. She's always in harmony with herself. She's completely in tune, holistic, and operates in her own natural organic field without any need for help in any way, as it were, right? It is the human beings that have inhabited, this earth, right? That we are responsible for the matters of imbalances that show up in our weather, in our societies, in our cultures, in our beliefs, wherever it is, and it is everywhere. The imbalances that have occurred have got nothing to do with nature or Earth herself, because she's a natural, organic, pulsating entity unto herself, and is natural and beautiful and raw, just as she is. But as we incarnate into these human bodies, because we need to go through this process of evolution, which means experiencing many different things, and some things that we need to experience, which would be considered in the darker spectrum of life, it unfortunately does have an impact on the earth as well. And so there's so many big levels to this, because it's like, what we do creates like a ripple effect, and speaks to really long periods of time in the future. For instance, there's so much that impacts so much. One thought, one action, one feeling has like a ripple effect, and I think we we need to kind of remember that, and I think Venus creating the Libran star point on the wheel is calling, and will be calling, our attention to the desperate necessity for peace, harmony, and balance on the earth, right? So those are just some thoughts around the bigger picture stuff. Again, as I said, there's many videos circulating if you want, sort of more information on that side of it. Now, let's get back to our personal charts. So because this Venus star point moves very, very slowly, it let me actually just share my screen and just show Now, this is close enough, okay? So the date here shown is the 23rd of October. This is 7:43 a.m. So this is this morning, actually. The moon has now moved into Libra as I'm doing this presentation, for instance. Just make that a bit bigger. Okay, so there's the Sun-Venus conjunction, which is also known as the Cazimi. The Cazimi conjunction, the word Cazimi is an Arabic term, and Cazimi, the understanding of Cazimi has been around for a very long time. It derives from medieval ancient astrology, right? So we also have a Sun-Mercury conjunction, which is a Cazimi as well, okay? Cazimi just literally translates to in the heart of the sun. So there are very different schools of thought, particularly in ancient traditional astrology, where it is said that when Venus is so close to the sun burns her out, as it were, right? There's a term called combustion and or Cazimi, which indicates that in traditional schools of thought that Venus loses power because the sun's rays are so radiant that it overpowers her. That's another school of thought, and that's not really necessary for what we're talking about today. But I just wanted to mention that because you'll come across material that speaks to that, and then you might be scratching your head saying, well, why does it say in traditional astrology that Venus is sort of hampered and harmed, as it were, by the sun's rays because they're just too bright? And then we've got this Venus star point that literally says the opposite, and it does. Well, the short answer to that is evolution. Things evolve, our consciousness evolves, our soul evolves, and so that means our wisdom and knowledge and understanding evolves as well. So the basic premise of a Cazimi Sun-Venus conjunction relative to the Venus star point is that she becomes this cosmic heartbeat. Venus is the brightest star in the sky. So when she is there, conjunct the sun, creating what we call a Venus star point, she apparently, and I believe this to be true because I've observed it through my own life, working backwards from when I was born and just seeing my own 5 Venus star points and how that's influenced my life. She lights things up, okay? She is a very powerful frequency that opens our heart in ways that are just beyond what we might think, what we might think we need to do or have to do, or what we think about romantic love and things like that. This is a much deeper love. I would consider the Venus star point to speak to that, because it's the cosmic heartbeat, that pulsating cosmic heartbeat. She opens our heart in such a way, because Venus is connected to love, right? She's the goddess of love. So the Venus star point activates this, our own personal cosmic heartbeat, and enables us to weave and conduct. Venus rules copper, and copper is a conductor, right? So it's how we conduct and weave in and out the literally the creative forces within us and our heart center, how we open our heart. Now, this is the really interesting thing, because a Venus star point activation, when the Venus star point activates something in your chart, that is, the Venus star point transits over something in your chart. Now the conjunction is always the strongest aspect. There's no two ways about that. The opposition is almost as strong, if not as strong sometimes, but it's just a different experience, right? And then I would bring in squares, and I'd bring in trines as well. I think they're very important aspects, even when you are working with the Venus star point. But certainly when the Venus star point forms a conjunction to one of your planets, that planet is suddenly activated with this frequency and this light that unfolds over many, many years, perhaps around about 8 years or so, sometimes a little bit longer. Why? Because for example, this Venus star point at 29 degrees, first of all, in 2026, the halfway point, this Venus star point is going to go back into Scorpio at 0 Scorpio. And that will be the final closure of this Venus star point in Scorpio, having been there for over 100 years. So this ingress, this is called an ingress when, when a planet ingresses into a new sign, when we have a Venus star point ingressing into a new sign, it's the birthing moment, right? And this is the birth chart, the birth moment for the Venus star point. However, this is based in Melbourne, Australia. So don't worry about the house positions of everything, because it's going to look different based on your location. What we are really interested in here is the conjunction itself and any aspects that it picks up, and that is not going to change based on your location. The only thing that will change is the houses that these are in. So if you have planets at 29 degrees of Libra, for instance, or 28 or 27, then, there's, and even lower than that really, but these next few years, these next 8 years, 10 years are going to be really primary from the point of view of Venus lighting up that area of life, meaning where is that planet in your chart? That's at 29, 28, 27, 26 of Libra. What house is that in? That's really important, because that's the field of where that star just lights up that planet in your chart, in your life. Now, if you don't have a time of birth, you can't work with it in that way. So you would just work with it from the point of view of, I don't have a time of birth, I don't know. So anyway, I have Venus in Libra, late Libra, I have the sun in late Libra. So I know that this Venus star point for the next 8-10 years is going to be lighting up the sun and Venus in my life. Now, the sun and Venus are very personal planets, right? So anyway, that's, just very simply putting it very basically. So for instance, I have the sun and Aries at 28, 29 Libra, Aries. So this Venus star point is exactly opposite my sun and exactly opposite my Mercury. Now I have many, many thoughts and intuitions of what the possibilities are for me with that Venus star point activating my sun and my Mercury. And, that's something that I will see over time, but I'm very enthusiastic and very excited about it, because Venus is in rulership in Libra. This is a Venus star point in its rulership sign. It holds tremendous promise, tremendous dignity, for creating just a lot more peace in our heart as well. I mean, look at just how distressed the world is and has been, for a very long time. So many people are so distressed and so feel so imbalanced in their life, There's not a lot of peace on the planet, and there's not a lot of peace inside people's hearts. And so this Venus star point really opens us up to start to embrace and cultivate new consciousness about peace and harmony and love and beauty, and about being more understanding of others' needs and things of that nature. Because Libra, which is in the natural order of the zodiac, is the seventh house, is the ability to see the other, to hear them, to feel them, to understand them. It's not about, it is about agreement. Libra is about agreement, but when you have that capacity to be objective, which is Libra, and view both sides to every situation, which is Libra, to have empathy, to listen, which is Venus, there's so much more grace in that, right? And there's so much more room for tolerance. And conflict doesn't, it just doesn't arise out of those sorts of fields, you know. Conflict arises out of Aries, not out of Libra, right? So there's a lot of prospects here for this Venus Libran star point to enable us to open our heart with a much higher frequency in our heart consciousness, because these Venus star points pour in consciousness into our own psyche, soul, and into the collective as well, from the point of view of what's now ready to be integrated at this next level of evolution, as it were, right? So we can think about these sorts of themes, which are, they're not revolutionary themes. They are themes that are described by Venus and Libra. But what is new about this is that in our lifetime, this is the first time we're experiencing a Venus Libran star point. The last time, as I said, was in 1871. So life looked very different then to what life looks now, right? Also, we have the matter that babies that are being born around this time are going to be the first babies, you know, for a very long time, who are born with a Venus Libran star point. So those souls that choose to be born at this time, you know, are coming in with a very, 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 very specific soul contract and soul intention to work on this pentagram, on this Venus star, on these Venus star points, on this cosmic wheel from the point of view of the Venus Libran star points. So we will start to see more peace, more harmony, more beauty, more justice, more fairness, and more equality. And it's not something that we're going to see overnight. It is something that will gradually integrate into the collective unconscious and collective consciousness, right? These things take time. That's why I said earlier at the beginning of this video, you know, people who don't understand how the Venus star point works might just think that the 22nd of October is the time where I should see something really magical light up. Now, some people might have something activated at that time that could be quite magical. I'm not saying that's not possible, but it is more typical that the journey unfolds over many, many years. So this Venus Libran star point opposite my Sun and Mercury, which is happening as I'm speaking to you right now, nothing out of the ordinary or magical has sort of really presented itself in terms of this 3D reality from what I can see, other than me just kind of contemplating this energy, you know, for a few hours today before I sat down to do this video, and feeling into it and asking the goddess to actually speak through me, to grace me and gift me with her grace and her beauty, so that I can articulate and share whatever she wants me to share. And so that was my intention with this video. Now, if you have planets at 29, as I was saying before, 29, 28, 27 Libra, or Aries for that matter, then this Venus star point is activating those planets in your chart, whatever planet that is. Whatever planet it is going to describe the unfoldment of that journey. And so what is Venus lighting up? Is it lighting up is she lighting up your Mercury, your Sun, your own Venus, Mars, Jupiter? So it could be any of the planets. Of course, it's always important to remember that the personal planets, they are called personal planets for a reason, because they are the energies that we literally express and embody every single day, consciously and unconsciously, but certainly consciously more than unconsciously, for instance. So they are the archetypes, such as Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars. I'm specifically talking about those planets. Those energies we are expressing every single day. The Sun is your own identity, and it's your own spirit as well. You know, the Moon is your emotional body. It's your emotional, instinctual habits. It's the rhythms in your body. It tells you when you are hungry, when you want to sleep, you know, when you need to go to the bathroom, etc., etc. Mars is your willpower, you know. The sun is also equals will, but Mars is very specifically our willpower, right? The fact that you get up out of bed every day, that's Mars, for instance, right? So the personal planets are called personal planets for a reason. So if you have a Venus star point activating a personal planet, it's something that would perhaps be more notable or more noticeable in your stream, in your life experience, right? I've had, for example, the Capricorn Venus star point, which is one of the star points on the wheel. It's been activating my Mars in Capricorn the last 8 years or so, decade, or a little bit longer even, actually. Depends what orb you use, right? Now, the matter of orbs comes down to people have different schools of thought. The Venus star point would have a different school of thought based on Ariel's perspective and so forth. And I guess that the one rule that we could possibly bring into orbs relating to the Venus star point is that because it's such a slow moving clock around the wheel, you can't give a 10-degree orb. That's just too unrealistic, because a 10-degree orb would be, you're looking at the approaching Venus star point. How can I say this? So let me show you, perhaps some visuals would be useful right now. Okay. So never mind that line. That line is just from what I was showing on the astrological chart a moment ago. So let me just see here. What example could I use? Okay, so let's start here. So if you look at January 19th, 1986, Capricorn star point, 29 degrees, evening star. Now, if you go down a few lines to 1990, which is 4 years later, thereabouts, you can see that the Venus star point is 28 degrees. So it's moved 1 degree in 4 years, okay? Let's keep going. If we keep going, then the next Capricorn Venus star point, 1994, which is another 4 years later, I'm just rounding it up, okay, is at 26 of Capricorn. So let's just say, for example, even with this right here, so we've got from 86 to about 94, right? That's, what's that? Brain's gone a bit funny. So, gosh, I've just had a mental blank. Anyway, it's about 8 years, 9 years, something like that, right? Which is a fair chunk in our life, almost a decade, right? And in a decade, that Venus star point has only moved a couple of degrees. So if you've got planets at 18 of Libra, of Capricorn, or 20 of Capricorn, this Venus star point is too far away from it, isn't it? Because it's 29, 28, 26. Some people might say, 6 degrees. Yeah, in the concept of aspects, 6 degrees is not huge at all. But we just need to understand that we are working with aspects from the point of view of a Venus-Sun conjunction that creates a Venus star point and moves very slowly on the wheel. So I've been observing this Venus star point, Capricorn Venus star point hitting off my Mars, for instance. So my Mars is at 22 Capricorn. So I would say from 2002, there's the Venus star point at 24 Capricorn. My Mars is 22. That's only 2 degrees away. So from 2002 to the present, which is 20 years, I've had the Capricorn Venus star point basically hitting off my mum's. Now, what has that meant? It has meant many, 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 many things. Has it all been wonderful and dazzling and magnificent? No. If we want to, I guess, if we want to create some definitions and identify certain things as being more challenging or more blissful, because that's how we experience life. We have ups, we have downs, we have highs, we have lows, we have things that feel good, we have things that don't feel so good, because we live in a world of duality. Everything is split, right? Split into two, as it were, right? We have day, night, man, woman, hot, cold, sun, moon, yin, yang, etc., right? We live in a world of duality where things are split. So we have this dual experience, which when you pull it all together, it becomes one. It's oneness. And that's why the number one is actually one of the most mysterious numbers and the most difficult to understand, because it really is everything, actually. It's a bizarre thing. So I'm just making some definitions here so that we understand that the Venus star point is magical, it's a vibration, it's magnetic, it lights things up in really powerful ways. And depending on which planet it's hitting in your chart, depending on where that planet is in your chart, depending on how old you are, what's going on in your life at that time? What are the circumstances? What are the chapters? What are the themes? What are you conscious of? These are all factors that come into it, right? And we're only talking about a Venus star point activating one of your planets by conjunction. Now, there could be a number of other complex things going on. You have a Venus star point activating one of your personal planets. It then hits off a yod pattern in your chart that you've got, or a T-square, or a grand trine. These are just some of the other themes that would be very important to consider as well. It could be that you have the Venus star point activating a planet in your chart. As I've shown you here, for me, I believe that this Venus star point really has been active for me for the last 20 years on my Mars, which, once again, hasn't necessarily been all glamorous and all fantastic. There's been lots of different challenges. And Mars is exalted in Capricorn. But Mars is a difficult planet. That's why it's called a malefic. It's not an easy planet. And so depending on where it is in your birth chart as well. But it has also brought to my consciousness and awareness many things that I've grown through and developed through that relate to Mars for me, okay? And particularly because of the house that it's in and what the implications are around that. And because Mars, for a woman, a heterosexual straight woman, which is myself, would equate to the men in my life, the relationships I've had and things like that, then that Venus star point on my Mars over the last 20 years really has described my relationships in a pretty interesting way, actually. Has that been easy? No, not at all. But have I grown from that? Yeah, absolutely. So I'm giving very general, broad examples because I don't want to talk about my personal life, right? I could share quite a bit about what's happened over the last 20 years in my life around relationships. And it's just not for me to do publicly though. But I'm just really trying to help you guys to work with this yourself, look at it yourself, have a look at, you can download this PDF from Ariel Gutman's website for free. You can look at an ephemeris. If you've got an astrology program, you can set it up so that it can print out for you Sun-Venus conjunctions for the last 200 years or for the last 1,000 years, whatever, right? So you can do these things yourself. if you understand how to do them, of course. So yeah, the point of this demonstration here is to show that a Venus star point hitting off one of your planets is going to be there for a long time, which is why this Libran Venus star point that occurs right now as I speak, it's going to be in play for about 110 years. If it hits something in your chart at the moment, that energy is going to unfold over the next 10, 15, 20 years, let's say. You can get more specific than that by fine-tuning some things, but I don't have time to do that in this video. But as an overview, as a general thing, I've just shown you that, I mean, in 2002, the Capricorn star point was at 24. My Mars is 22. So clearly that's close enough. So from 2002, if we fast forward to the present, which is here, January 8th, 2022, the retrograde cycle of Venus we had this year, which is a morning star, was at 18 degrees of Capricorn. Now that's 4 degrees away from my Mars, and I can feel that it's sort of, I don't feel it's quite there actually. I feel it's really moved away from my Mars, for instance. But back in 2014, definitely that, and in fact, that year was a really crucial year for me, professionally and in my relationships, and Mars does connect to professional matters for me as well, because I have it in Capricorn, and that's about my professional persona, if you like, right? So 2014 was quite a critical year for me. It was a very big, probably one of the biggest years of my life, not the biggest, but one of the biggest. And so the Capricorn Venus star point was 21, so it was only a degree off my natal Mars. But if you go further down to 2018, it dropped from 21, it got to 18 degrees. So it moved about 3 degrees there, right? So it dropped quite a bit, okay? And so from 2018, that Capricorn Venus star point, I'd say at this point here, it's really backing off from my Mars. And I'm actually happy about that, because Mars is not an easy planet in my chart, and even the Venus star point, who is supposed to bring gifts and love and beauty and harmony and balance, and she does, and is this magnetic force, it is going to correspond to the planet that she's connecting with. What is that planet? What describes that planet? Where is it in your chart? You know, so these are the fine-tuning elements that need to be considered, right? So coming to the present moment, if you have, you know, planets at late degrees of Libra, again, think about what is the planet? What sort of shape is it in? What house is it in? What aspects does it have? Things like that, right? You know, if just a very simple, straightforward example, if it's your Mercury, then it's obviously got to do with your whole realm of learning, education, communication, left brain, Gemini, Mercury. And so within that might exist the journey of writing, whether that's personal, reflective writing for yourself, whether that's writing a book, a short story, writing a script for a movie, writing poetry. It could be it. There's lots of different avenues and expressions of writing. In whichever way it unfolds, it will be writing and communicating and speaking in some way, right? Because it's Mercury, for instance. That's just a very simple example. Then again, you know, note what house it's in. Speaking of houses, let's just backtrack a little bit. So depending on whether you're using whole sign houses or quadrant houses in your way of astrological practice. It's important to say, from my perspective and opinion, through a lot of observation, both systems work, both the quadrant, both the whole sign houses. They both work in different ways for different reasons. One's not better than the other. One's not more right than the other. These are important things to understand. For those that are wondering what's a quadrant, this is a quadrant chart, for instance. Okay, I'm using, well, in this case, I've just left it on Placidus. I normally don't use Placidus. I use the Koch house system, which is spelled K-O-C-H. There are many different house systems, and most astrology software programs have most of them in there. You can play around with them and see which one you prefer. Whole sign houses will always have 0 degrees on the cusp. Okay, so that's a huge difference with the Venus star point, because what you are then doing is, so how can I, let me just demonstrate this. Just so that people are clear on whole sign and quadrant. So let's just go. It's a little bit too slow. Okay, so this is a good example. See, just imagine this was somebody's birth chart, right? So the Venus star point then is exactly on the 12th house cusp of this particular individual, if it was somebody's birth chart, which it will be. So what's going to happen is, if we just click that over, can you see what's happened there? That Venus star point, it starts out in the 12th house, but because it goes backwards in the zodiac, it's going to move out of that person's 12th house and move into the 11th. Not too far down the track, actually, because I specifically put 29 degrees on the cusp, just to show that sort of radical change, you know, the shift from one house to the other so clearly in that example. But there's going to be many examples where, if you're using quadrant house systems, you're going to have a Venus star point tracking over 2 houses for many, 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 many years. If you do whole sign houses, you will have the Venus Libra star point, or any Venus star point, be in one house, that is a specific area of life, for your whole life, right? So this is something to play around with, something to explore, something to consider. I personally look at both, and I think both have validity. That is whole sign house and quadrant house as well. And I think I've done a video where I've made some distinctions between whole sign and quadrant house systems. So just perhaps search that video, or have a think about it, you know, yourself, right? So we've got that matter to consider as well. So just to summarize, really, the Venus star point is a powerful magnetic portal frequency that opens our heart to things that we really need to embody from a much deeper soul level. And sometimes that means opening our heart to pain and loss and grief, because the Venus star point can also bring up the transition of a loved one. And I've seen it many times as an example. So in any case, whether you have an experience of your beloved meeting, connecting with your beloved, as it were, or losing your beloved or a loved one, those very opposite, if you like, experiences can both be connected to a Venus star point. That's why it's not just, as I said before, it's not just about all the good things coming up, as it were, right? Just to use simple terminology, because we have this, we just have this natural inclination to draw comparisons, to witness and observe the duality, both in ourselves, others, and society, and so forth, right? We have these definitions, identifications, and so forth, right? Nothing is just on one stream, as it were. So, yeah, I guess you just need to consider, what is this Venus star point activating in your birth chart? It could be activating your ascendant. You might have a Venus star point at, you might have a Libran ascendant at 29 degrees. That Venus star point means it's right on there, right on your ascendant. So, for the next 8-10 years, you're going to be, your whole relationship life world is going to light up through Venus. The hopeful thing, though, and promising feature of the star point in Venus, in Libra, this Venus star point in Libra, is that Venus inherently brings in grace and beauty and harmony and balance and equality and justice. Those are inherent qualities that are expressed through the goddess Venus and through the archetype of Libra. And I love the word grace. When you see something or someone who moves gracefully, and the most beautiful example of that for me are ballerinas. When you see a beautiful presentation, expression of the body through ballet, it is such a gracious, graceful expression, of this creative force within us and of this physical vessel. There's something so astonishing about very specific grace in that way, and the beauty of heart and soul. Now, Venus corresponds to the aesthetic, exterior, physical beauty, for sure, right? But then, on the other hand, we have the expression, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, because indeed it is. And then we have the matter of somebody might be so beautiful on the exterior level because they've been graced and gifted with, Venus genes. And, they just have this Venusian appearance about them. But then, have you ever met somebody who looks so beautiful on the outside, but there's not a hell of a lot going on the inside sometimes? You kind of wonder, are the lights on? What's going on? I've met quite a few people like that in my life. And for some people who operate on that level, it doesn't bother them. They can have an intimate sexual encounter with a person like that just because that person's so beautiful. Whereas for me, that wouldn't cut it, For me, beauty is, yes, it's from the external aesthetic aspects of perhaps the way someone looks, or something beautiful that I see out there, such as a painting or something about nature. etc. But when it comes to a human being and another soul, I can see the radiance and grace of the beauty that a person's soul and heart radiates. I can see it when it's there. I can feel it. And that is what draws me in. So when we think about the Libra and Venus star point, we can also think about that that necessary grace of harmony and balance and beauty and balance and coordination. It's very interesting because in esoteric astrology, ray number 4, this just dawned on me right now, not this exact thing, but just a connection I'm about to make. Ray number 4, which is ruled by Moon Mercury. Is it Moon Mercury? I think it is Moon Mercury. In any case, ray number 4 is termed harmony through conflict. Harmony through conflict. Now that sounds like a bizarre statement, like a bizarre phrase. It's like, how do you achieve harmony through conflict? Ray number 4 is said to reflect the consciousness of the earth plane. And again, I would say not the earth herself, as in Gaia, or Gaia, however you want to say that, or Yi in Greek, but rather the consciousness of humanity and the souls incarnate on the earth at the moment are at very much at ray number 4, which is the ray that corresponds to harmony, Venus, conflict, Mars. So ray number 4, however, even though it's very complex, I'm not going to go into teaching about ray number 4 right now, but I just wanted to highlight that ray number 4, which is harmony through conflict, is also the ray that corresponds to when you see grace and coordination and beauty and art, that's ray number 4. So people who have ray number 4 emphasized in their as a personality ray or a soul ray, for instance, you'll usually see something about them that is so incredibly artistic. Really, I've seen it a lot actually in people who have strong ray number 4. So coordination, beauty, art, music, Venus is pleasures, the pleasures of life and things that please us. And music pleases us in such a vast way, such a magnificent way, right? Music, there's lots of studies that have been done that speak to the power of music therapy, for instance, and how that impacts the wiring in people's brains, hertz frequency and so forth, right? There's so many healing attributes to sound, which is frequency, right? And so Venus in Libra, again, she points to these fields, and, we've had some pretty ordinary and pretty fake shit music for a long time that's come out, and anyone can sing a song now and be called a musician. It's like there's no soul, there's no real depth and soul and real quality of music and musicality and creativity in a lot of artists, singers that are singers these days, So I'm hopeful that the Libra and Venus star point is going to bring through a new era of music as well, which will be so beautiful because it's Venus in Libra. That quality the real essence and quality of great music that has soul and beauty and grace and those sorts of things, that's going to come back through as well. So we have that too, even from our own personal sort of level, and certainly from a collective level as well. But again, I was trying to summarize and something else popped into my consciousness. So I'll just start summary again. Where is this Venus star point in your birth chart? Which house is it in? That's a big deal. It's a really big deal. It's a whole new frequency, magnetic force that's being born through you. Your soul intended to be here at this time of this transition. And let's not forget that for those of you, which will be many of you, who were born with a Scorpio Venus star point, this is your Scorpio Venus star point now becoming a Libran Venus star point, isn't it? So all of your life, you've been working with the Scorpio Venus star point. I'm one of those people as well. And that has served me well in a lot of ways. The depth and riches that have come out of my Scorpio Venus star point, I wouldn't trade for anything. It's the profound journeys of soul that my Scorpio Venus star point has ignited in me and assisted in my evolution is there's no words really to encapsulate what that journey has been. And the Scorpio Venus star point for me that's the head of the pentagram for me. Now, we all have a pentagram in our chart, 5 Venus star points. The head of the pentagram, it's kind of like, it's who you are. The arms and the legs are one is where you are giving Venus goodies, Venus energy, Venus frequency, love. And one arm is how you are receiving those same things. One leg, again, is the foundation you are grounding yourself on. Both legs are foundation, actually, but one is, again, receiving and one is giving. But the head is like the head and the heart. There's this alignment and energy of the head and the heart. And the Venus star point at your birth, the one that is the head of the star, is your inherent natural talent and gifts that you were gifted by the goddess, that you will inhabit for the duration of your life and cultivate and express and develop and radiate around you, as it were. So for those of us here at this time, we chose to be born with a Scorpio Venus star point. Now, there are some other examples historically where there's been changes, like in the 80s, for instance. So this is not that this is the first time this is happening, well, unless you were born post 86, I suppose. But if you were born before that, then you've witnessed a couple of changes on the wheel. And so your Scorpio Venus star point now becomes the Libran Venus star point. And so from an evolutionary soul level, you chose that, I chose that. And why have we chosen that? The answer, I suppose, is complex, deep, and perhaps unique for each of us. Because again, there is a collective implication in terms of unity and balance and harmony, coordination, cooperation, because there hasn't been a lot of that, has there? People are just shooting each other down left, right, and center, verbally or otherwise. The ego completely out of control, wanting to dominate and control for itself. And Libra doesn't operate in that way. She's trying to establish something so graceful and beautiful on the earth, and for us individually on a soul level. Now, the Scorpio journey of the Venus star point in Scorpio has taken us through tremendous transformations and lots of soul seeking and lots of other different things. So there's a part of our soul that has grown through the Scorpio Venus star point. We've grown. It's very different for each of us, so that's why I'm struggling to find the words of how to encapsulate that. But it is an evolutionary journey for all of us individually, and we've come to that point in our soul's journey that we now are ready to embrace and integrate Libra. And once again, Libra is ruled by Venus. Venus is what defines these Venus star points, along with the sun, of course, and the earth for that matter. But anyway, we are stepping into a real true reflection of Venus's grace and beauty and balance and harmony. And those words, they're beautiful words, but they can't really encapsulate just how important this transition, because we are going to see it over time. We're going to see it over many, many, many years to come. So anyway, I suppose one other thing though about Libra is that it is a cardinal sign, and cardinal energy is about action as well. So, whilst Libra has all those characteristics, Libra is also about action as well. It's very proactive when it comes to relationships and relating, particularly. Libras, they just need to have that mirror, looking back at them, which comes through way of sharing their life and talking to somebody, having somebody listen to them, things like that. So yeah, it's a cardinal sign, but it is an evening star, so it's not the warrior goddess. It's the celestial goddess, which has very much to do with wisdom, the cerebral part of our consciousness. It's in Libra, so peace, harmony, beauty, grace. And that's right. The other thing that I wanted to mention, I think I've briefly mentioned it, on the wheel at the moment, we have, now with this Libra and Venus star point, we have 2 air signs, 2 fire signs, and 1 earth sign. Now there's got to be 5 elements, because there are 5 Venus star points on the wheel, and there'll be a doubling up because we only have, earth, air, water, and fire as far as elements are concerned. And the elemental nature of archetypes is a really important feature of an archetype and how it expresses itself. And very simply, fire and air is very action and mind orientated, whereas water and earth is inner. Water takes us in and down, and earth kind of grounds us to the earth, if you like. It keeps us sort of focused on earth oriented matters, creating this, building this, working towards this, etc. Fire and air are the qualities that create, first of all, inspiration. Fire, inspiration in spirit. When we are in spirit, that is being in the heart of the flame and the fire, the radiance of fire. And a Sun-Venus conjunction encapsulates that as well. Her power and radiance and and everything that she's oozing through that time is with the assistance of the sun's beams and light, which is soul and spirit as well. So air and fire really inspire us, and with air and fire, we tend to see movement, inspiration, spontaneity, and new consciousness and ideas being born that bring forth greater inspiration for us individually and collectively, and then in lots of different pockets of life experiences. So I'm thinking about, music, for instance, inspiring music that comes out that's really inspiring. Think about some of the incredible artists and musicians and poets and conductors and dancers, from the last sort of 100, 200 years or so, just some of the most exquisite art that has been created, and nowadays somebody will, no offense, right? No, I don't mean any offense to this, but somebody might create like a steel something made out of steel, and just looks like that. And it'll be centered in a gallery, and they'll say, this is the artist's impression of yada, 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 yada. So when you look at that, and when you think about the extraordinary buildings that have been built, through centuries, such as like, old Gothic churches and things like that, or art from Botticelli, just to quote someone that is very well known, that is the known name for the beautiful art that he's created of Venus that everybody uses in their work when they're talking about Venus. Think about those sorts of expressions of art. I mean, we haven't seen that for a long time. So Venus, star point in Libra, we're moving into, it'll be more futuristic expression, but it is Venus in Libra. So it is about beauty and grace, right? So air, fire, spontaneous, inspired thought and movement. Those are the signs we have on the wheel. We have Libra, which just began. We have Gemini. We have Leo, which is a fire sign, and we have Aries, which is a fire sign, and we still have Capricorn on the wheel, which is the earth sign. By 2041, the Aries Venus star point will become the Pisces Venus star point. So there's shift in elements and qualities. There's a lot of layers to this. But there's I love the sense of air and fire, actually, possibly because I've got a really strong dose of air and fire in my own chart. And I think my mentor said this to me, and I just can't quite capture the exact way he said it, but it was something like air and fire is air and fire is somehow the need, desire, way of living your life through feeling free, spontaneous, and inspired. Now, he said it a little bit differently, but those words were contained in his whole sentence. And I couldn't think of more beautiful words to describe air and fire. Being able to be spontaneously free and inspired in movement and thought. That's what's on the wheel with these Venus star points at the moment, 2 air, 2 fire. So yeah, there are lots of bigger layers, but relative to your own charts, just have a look at where this Libra and Venus star point lands. If you're using whole sign, it'll be different, obviously. If you're using quadrant, it'll be 2 houses. Yeah, and if you want to know more, just email me. You know, if you don't know how to get your head around it and you want to catch up with me, we can work something out. Down the track, I think what I might do, perhaps I'll see, I might just do a follow-up video and just give some expressions to the Venus star point conjunct the angles and conjunct all the planets. And that's just a conjunction, and that will be a lot of work just in that. But perhaps I'll do that somewhere down the track. And don't worry, we've got plenty of time. This Libra and Venus star point is there for a long time, first of all. And secondly, in 2026, it goes back into Scorpio very quickly. Just to say, she's got to say her final goodbye to Scorpio. And she's doing that in 2026. But in any case, the birthing, the ingress, the starting point of this frequency, Venus in Libra, begins right now. And there's very subtle layers to this, and there are things that would be going on inside us in our own psychic sort of structure and heart and soul that we may or may not be aware of, conscious of, that's leading us, right, towards opening that heart to that Libra and Venus star point, which is more than just rattling off some keywords. It's a huge transition in our soul's journey. So I'm going to leave it there, and I might be back with Ariel. We'll see how we go with that one, because you know, there's just timing factors have been a little bit difficult because she's been traveling a lot, and her next availability just doesn't work with me because I've got to attend to some things in my own private life. So we'll see how that goes. But in any case, I'll see you guys soon. Much love, and love and star blessings, and lots of beautiful Venus blessings into your heart, so that you may feel her grace, her beauty, and bestow that love and peace in your own heart, and then onto others as well, because we really need that on the planet. We really need it. See you soon.